Hello, everyone. Brother Al McClaney with this week's stewardship video, and we're into more than halfway through February. It's February 19th when I'm doing this current video. And before I get too far, let's read the disclaimer. No advice should be seen as a recommendation, as I am not a licensed financial advisor and is for educational purposes only. And what inspired this week's video is a CNBC report I heard about the spending ability of Black people has increased since 2021 and went up 171%, specifically $1.6 trillion increase in buying power by Black America. But yet our net worth went down 14%. And that's been continuing through the years that we've been great consumers and our buying power has been going up, but the net worth has been going down. And so what also inspired me was a show that was popular in 1984, 1995, Robin Leach, you can see to the left, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. And he would go around to all these famous and rich people and we get a peek at their lives. They had things like, private jets, expensive cars, as well as yachts. And that may not be your story, and there's nothing wrong with those things. But if those things cause you to have a decrease, for instance, in your net worth, where you're not continuously increasing the assets, but instead the liabilities are starting to pull you down, that's not good. And so we talked about inflation last week and the causes of inflation. So I want to look at lifestyle inflation. That's when we're inflating our lives. And see on this slide, you can see I specifically chose a house that's a mansion. And so again, may not be a lifestyle rich and famous like a mansion, but it could be on the right side, just development of housing. We know there's a housing boom going on right now. That could be. And as I said before, I want to emphasize anything that I mentioned, there's nothing wrong with having nice things, having luxurious items, having a nice home, even a huge mansion home, but it becomes a problem if it's first in our life and not the Lord. So let's look at Haggai, first chapter, verses 2 through 4. I love the Message Bible, message from God of the angel armies. The people procrastinate. They say, this isn't the right time to rebuild my temple, the temple of God. Shortly after that, God said more, and Haggai spoke it. How is it that it's the right time for you to live in your fine new homes while the home, God's temple, is in ruins? In other words, they were putting their lifestyle ahead of the Lord, and that's always going to be disastrous. So you say it before. I mean, my life ain't buying a huge house, Al. It's not even a luxurious car, but I put some other things on this. It's home with me, Louis Vuitton store. And that's just representing any kind of designer. And again, I want to emphasize there's nothing wrong with having those things. But here's the Amazon Prime truck. And we see it rolling all the time. Starbucks, I go there all the time to do my Bible study fellowship homework. There's a Mercedes, there's an iPhone. So all of these could represent lifestyle inflation if we're going into debt to do those, or we're sacrificing the will of God to do those. Haggai 1, verses 5 through 9, the Message Bible continues. And then a little later, God of the angel army spoke out. Take a good hard look at your life. Think it over. You have spent a lot of money, but you haven't much to show for it. You keep filling your plates, but you never get filled up. You keep drinking and drinking and drinking, but you're always thirsty. You put on layer after layer of clothes, but you can't get warm. And so in the end, verse 7 says, that's why God the angel army said, take a good hard look at your life. Think it over. The God said, here's what I want you to do. Climb into the hills, cut some timber, bring it down and rebuild a temple. Do it just for me, honor me. So in other words, what's the answer? Is to turn to the Lord and his principles and realize, and it's interesting in that scripture, I never really noticed that, but it talks about layers of clothing. Could that be luxury design items? You drink but never get enough. I had Starbucks up here. I didn't even think about that until I started doing this video that those are represented. But I'm going to show you something related to these. Again, nothing wrong with these items, but don't just be a consumer. We can also be an investor. And specifically, remember, The ones I've listed here: Louis Vuitton, Amazon, Starbucks, uh, iPhone, which is Apple. Think about those. So let's talk about how we can avoid this lifestyle inflation. So how to avoid lifestyle inflation? Here's the don'ts. Don't take on new debt because you can afford it, which means that you've looked at the monthly payments and you say, oh, well, I can afford that. Just because you can afford the monthly payments on something does not mean you can truly afford to buy it. The interest alone could make you pay far more than the original sticker price. The other don't try to keep up with the Joneses. It's like Rachel Cruz says in her best-selling book, Love Your Life, Not Theirs. Too many people allow cultural expectations and other people dictate their own values and family priorities. And see, now we have a front seat to see it all thanks to social media. My wife always talks about people post a lot on Instagram and Facebook, and you think that's their life, but you get caught up in that and thinking that's all that's going on. And so I lead that into don't fall into FOMO, fear of missing out trap. The way others spend their money should not dictate the way you spend yours. The truth about the Joneses is that they're probably broke and in debt, busy trying to keep up with someone else. So those are the don'ts. So don't let that increase and become lifestyle inflation for you. What do you want to do? Well, this is what you want to do. You want to make out a budget. And another word I use is spending plan. So the key to winning with money is simple. It's called zero-based budgeting, and you do it every month before the month begins. And so what a zero-based budget is that you take your income minus your expenses and you want it to equal zero, meaning anything that's left off, you still want to give that a job. So that'll keep you living within your means, and actually living below your means means that what's left over, then you start budgeting that toward if you have credit card debt or student loans, or giving more, or saving and investing more. So that's why you want to go to zero. You don't have anything left over. Dave Ramsey says if you don't give every dollar a job to do, it'll become an independent contractor or a free agent and go do its own thing, and you won't know where that money went. So with a budget in place, you'll know exactly how much you can spend, what you can afford, and that will avoid that inflation or lifestyle inflation. So instead of relying on a credit card or a loan to afford to splurge, just take small amounts of money over time, and then when there's something you want to do related to your lifestyle, you can pay for it cash and not have to put it on the credit card or take out a loan. So let's go ahead and transition and remember those companies that I identified. But as we always do when we transition, we look at the earnings for this week, February 21st. A lot of important companies are reporting, and some of those could be good investment opportunities. So there's the disclaimer again. I'm not recommending these are for educational purposes only, but we've got Teladoc, which was a kind of a favorite during the pandemic because a lot of people were doing meetings with their doctor virtual. So that stock shot up. I don't know if it's going to maybe sustain that. So watch it and see. Home Depot, people start doing additions and repairs on their homes, upgrades on their homes. We'll see how that goes. Macy's, Lowe's, of course, related to Home Depot. Probably if Home Depot had a good quarter, maybe Lowe's also had a good quarter. Then you've got TJ Maxx related to consumer spending. We've got Rocket Mortgage. We'll see if the continuing hot mortgage industry is going to continue. Got Coinbase, which is going to give us some insight about crypto. Then we got Norwegian. Are the cruise ships returning? I had a friend that just went on, Bible study friend, just went on a Viking cruise. He said the boat had a capacity of 900. He said it was maybe 300 of them on that boat. So it may be a good time to get a great deal on taking a cruise. And he said they were had to be fully vaxxed and they got tested every day. So it'd be interesting what Norwegian's earnings reporting for last quarter. This is what I was talking about. So instead of just being a consumption provider or consumer, and we talked about Black buying power going up, but yet wealth going down, not only consume it, but invest in it. So we mentioned iPhone. Well, that's Apple. There's Louis Vuitton. You could actually invest in Louis Vuitton. And these are the stock symbols. But we know sometimes the stock individually can be pricey, where here's an exchange traded fund called Lux, L-U-X-E is the symbol. And see, here's the top 15 holdings of Lux. They're luxury items. Now they all fall into this consumer discretion area, but I just named this one luxury item ETF because it was one of the few I found. Here's Mercedes-Benz. Here is Estee Lauder, Tesla. So these are the top 15 holdings of the ETF Lux. Here is another consumer discretion ETF. Last week we did consumer staples, which was a good way to invest because those are the items that people still have to have no matter what the inflation is. But here's consumer discretion. We talked about those trucks that are probably rolling all around your community. Here's Amazon. Here's Starbucks. Nike's in there. So all of these, Home Depot that's reporting, this is in this ETF called FDIS is the symbol. And how did I find them? Going through that etfdb.com. etfdb.com. I just researched and I found those. Well, we know sometimes that even the ETF can be pricey, but we have another way of doing it. We can look at the ETF and say, oh, I like those companies. And I specifically put a arrow by Apple, and we talked about Louis Vuitton. There's Amazon, Starbucks. Well, let's take a look at Apple and Amazon. We know those are pricey stocks. Remember, one of my favorite things to do, and not recommending Charles Schwab, but you can find either the Fidelity or through Webull, my cousin talks about, or even I think Robinhood. You can do slices of the stock. So here's the screens from Charles Schwab, which is, I have an account there. Well, Apple, it's trading at $167.30 per share, but you can do as little as $5, $5 minimum. And there's Apple. Here's Amazon trading at $3,052.03 per share, but you can do a stock slice, $5. Right? So you can build a portfolio, even of expensive stocks that are in the S&P 500. I looked for Louis Vuitton, I didn't see it. I saw Estee Lauder, and I didn't see, I don't believe, Mercedes. So there's still some luxury items out there that you can invest in those companies through the stock slices. And the ones that you can't, maybe you look at the ETF and see that if it's in your price range. Last, let's look at the market, and we are now in a downtrend. So I moved my lines before, which showed us clearly an uptrend, and we are definitely in a downtrend. So here's QQQ, and I added a couple of lines on here. So first, this red line is now the trend. Trend is definitely down. Then I put some different support lines of where we look like we bounced off of here in yellow, and we could break that, and the next one could be at this level. So we closed at $341.51 for QQQ, which is an exchange traded fund. We could be headed down to $330. I also added these two lines here, and these are called moving averages. And so the kind of, and I think it's magenta and then purple, or this top line here is what they call 50-day simple moving average, and this magenta is the 200-day simple moving average. And what this does is it takes the prices of QQQ and divides it by the period of time. So for the 50, it takes those prices, divides it, the daily prices, and I don't know if it's the open, I think it's the close prices, and divides it by the 50 days. And then it gives you this line. So you can see the prices are trending down. Then you have the 200-day, same concept, divided by 200 days, those prices, and you can see that's still going up because it's a longer period of time. So it's going to take a little time for it to kick in compared to the 50-day, which is a shorter period of time. But this is why this is important. These are the main moving averages that the mutual fund managers are looking at. So if this crosses, it's called a death cross. That's if the 50 crosses the 200-day, then we are definitely in what they would call correction, which we are now. And that could be a sign we are now in a bear market. So we'll be watching that. And you'll probably hear them on CNBC talk about, oh, we had a death cross. And I think it did cross in the NASDAQ. And this is the QQQ I'm using. And the last time was 2020 when it crossed, I think right before we were we were right into the pandemic. And then we know we had that down period. SPY, same thing. It is in a downtrend because of the selling. And that's still the line from the uptrend, but we're clearly now in a downtrend. I put the same 50-day, which is the magenta, I believe, greenish looking, and then the purple looking is the 200-day, and you can see they're heading for a cross. Here's the levels here. We closed at $434.23 on Friday. Next level could be going down to 430. So we're clearly in a down period. But here's the thing, don't panic. If you're doing dollar cost averaging, which means like your 401k, every month you're purchasing, you don't stop doing that. Now, you may move some things to cash and have what I call some dry powder, so that when we get to even lower, that you're buying at that point more shares or more units for a cheaper price. So dollar cost averaging, you still continue to average through, which means we'll bounce and come out of this, and then you will have more bang for your buck. People have said the stock market is the only place they know that things go on sale and people don't buy, right? So, and you have to have the constitution, you have to have the patience. You can't let fear get involved. But remember, this is the long game. So that's the key is don't panic, all right? Follow God's principles. So as we close out, I want to remind you of my cousin's YouTube videos still out there, Bryant Legacy Building, as he walks you through how to open like a Webull and Robinhood and how to invest. He's be doing that, a couple of videos out there for him. And you can do a search under Al McClain on my YouTube to find my YouTube channel, set up a notification. So when I do these videos, which is usually Saturday or Sunday, lately it's been Saturday consistently, you'll get a notification. You can also email dcraddock@sjbcfamily.com. That's our church, and be set up on the weekly distribution list where you'll get the church announcements. And also in there is the stewardship video that happens, and that'll come to you every Wednesday. Last thing I want to mention is, of course, stewardship we talk about is important. In this one specifically, we do financial emphasis, but stewardship is your whole life, which includes our civic duties. And you can see I'm giving a thumbs up, and you may see my I voted sticker. I'm in Texas. The primary early voting has started here, and I voted today. And that's a great thing we have in Texas. We can do early voting. If you don't have that available to you in your state, whatever that day is for a primary, that's just as important, because oftentimes we wait to the general election. But it's important that we got the candidates that have our beliefs and what you have researched. That's important. Every vote counts to make sure that that candidate gets out of the primary to actually get to the general election. So we want to make sure we do our civic duty. That's part of stewardship also. And as Christians, we should be responsible in doing our civic duties and voting. So make sure you get out there and vote if you have early voting available. If not, on whatever the election day is for your state, make sure you do that. So that completes this week's stewardship video, and we will see you next week. And as my pastor, Denny Dwight Davis, who's celebrating 45 years in ministry, says, have a good week and remember to keep a good spirit. And what we say on the stewardship video is, remember, Jesus is Lord. God is Lord of our life. Therefore, he is the creator and the owner and provider of all the resources, but we are his faithful stewards, and we need to follow his principles in that faithfulness. See you next week.